That's what I mean when I say sex is a strategy. What is the strategy? What is the need in the strategy? So is it connection? Is it play? Is it just pleasure? When we think of it like that and we apply it to couples trying to conceive right now, the strategy of sex for them becomes procreation. And then the grip happens, right? The grip, because they're gripped on this way. This is the strategy to get this need that is so important to them met. And so what happens when we grip anything that we want so bad? We grip one strategy. That's the only way to do it. Oh my God, right? It takes all the juice out of it. It takes all the intimacy. It becomes...
Today, we're diving into a topic that's deeply personal, often misunderstood, and profoundly transformational: the alchemy of intimacy. Sexual energy isn't just about sex. It's about safety, presence, creativity, connection, and power. When it's blocked, we feel disconnected from ourselves and from those we love. And when it's healed, intimacy becomes medicine. I'm joined by a women's empowerment coach and sexologist who works at the intersection of sexual healing and relationship alchemy, helping women reclaim their bodies, desires, and voice in a deeply embodied way. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. I'm very excited to have Brittany with us today, who is a certified holistic sexologist and authentic Tantra practitioner and the creator of Sexual Reprogramming Method, who has helped hundreds of women over 35 feel more confident, embodied, and empowered through transforming their relationship with sex and pleasure and restoring intimacy in their relationships. Welcome, Brittany.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So I'm so glad to have you on because obviously with the work I do with fertility, with conception, it is so important that a lot of these couples are having that beautiful intimacy. And obviously, the trouble is if they've been on this conception journey for years, right? Obviously the spark starts disappearing. Even themselves, they start not feeling sexy enough or, there's so much that is happening around that space. Or if they've had children, and they want to have a second, they just don't feel as confident because their bodies have changed. So I'd love to really jump into some great conversations about, why it's so important to maintain that and some great practical advice for basically just restoring, intimacy, healing that sexual energy and bringing back that deep connection again.
Yes, that sounds great.
So how did you get into that? I'd love to sort of just hear a background about what made you get into this particular, sort of niche and work.
Sure. Yeah. So I have been a yoga teacher. I started as a yoga teacher when I was 22 years old. And I kind of expanded from that. For years, I did that. And then I did trainings and I taught teacher trainings. I did a lot of service work within those. And a lot of the work that I did was really deep. It was really embodied. It was really focused on the nervous system and just organically as it evolved over the years. And that was over 23 years ago. So I've always been in the space of deep transformation. And then I started doing some training and taking on just transformational coaching different clients around their confidence, around their embodiment, and not necessarily focusing on sex and pleasure right away. And then I started exploring my own sexual journey more in 2016. In 2016, I became polyamorous. I opened my relationship. I also came into a space where I was writing more about my sexuality and my relationships. And I believe it was 2017, I wrote a blog that was picked up by Huffington Post around having HSV-1, which is genital herpes. And it went viral, and lots and lots and lots of people reached out to me, mostly women, feeling heard and feeling safe to share their story with me. And that's really where it began. It was me being open and honest about myself and my own sexual shame and my own experience with my sexuality and my relationships as I began to expand what relationships meant to me. And from there, people just started reaching out to me more and wanting to work with me and wanting to just feel seen and heard by me. And from there is when I started training, and I finally dropped into I took about 1,000-hour training with the holistic school of authentic Tantra. And
Mm.
it's the only government accredited school in the world for Tantra, but also holistic sexual healing. And from there, I actually uncovered my own repressed sexual trauma that I had like inklings of, but I never explored it because it was like, well, it's not what my body is offering. Right. And so I'm not going to dig for something that I don't know. But through the Tantra and through the deep embodiment work that I began to do, my body revealed what had been holding for a long time, and everything really started to make sense then. And from there, little by little, I developed my own process and system for supporting women in healing their trauma. Even if it's not a capital T trauma, there's a lot of things in the world that contribute to women not feeling safe in their bodies or in their sexuality or in their pleasure even. And so that is what I've been doing now for the past 7 years.
Wow. So, I mean, you covered so much there, and I can see a lot of the tie-ins because in my sort of work with fertility, there is definitely, I find that the longer someone takes to conceive, at the beginning, once you're sort of asking and they've come to me and it's been a long journey, a lot of it has to do with trauma. Whether it's them, their partners have been through trauma, there is definitely, and if you go all the way back to childhood trauma, we can talk a little bit about why is it so important to release and work through that, not only for your intimate, but also then for being a parent yourself if you're on that parental journey. So let's talk about, what does sexual energy and healing really mean beyond just sex? What is that sexual energy that people are talking about when they mention sexual energy, or how you explain it to your clients?
Sure. So sexual energy you can look at it a couple different ways. Okay. So the first way, you can think of it as the chakra system. So the Hindu chakra system. Now, I practice Tibetan Tantra, so it's a little different, but the chakra system is what most people know as the Hindu chakra system. And there are 7 major chakras in the body. And chakra just means wheel. It's a wheel of bioidentical matter, right? That moves in the body. If imaging was taken, you would kind of see it as like a conglomeration of nerve ganglia around the spine, right?
Mm.
And the second chakra, or the sex chakra, or the sacral chakra, this is where we hold our sexual energy, our creative energy, which is very much related. Also, our relationship with money, all of that, first, second for that one, all of that lives in this area. And so the first way I like to think of sexual energy is very real. Energy is our life force. It's sometimes called chi. It's sometimes called
Yeah.
prana. And it contributes to our vitality, but it also contributes to the way we experience pleasure, intimacy, and orgasm. So that's kind of the first way. But then if we think of it from a tantric perspective, it's a little bit different, a little bit more expanded. So there's something called the nadis, which are the energy channels. Sometimes they're called meridians as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right, yeah, I'm sure you might call them
In Chinese
meridians.
medicine. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. In Sanskrit, that's channel. It means channel. It's the place, and I'm sure you've talked about this before. It's the place in
Mm.
which the energy flows. And from a tantric perspective, and like I said, I teach lineage-based Tibetan Tantra. The idea is that if one of these nadis, which holds our energy, is blocked or broken, then disease, mental illness, all of these things come from that. And
Yeah.
it is the pathway of the energy. And so that's a very basic interpretation just of the energy that flows through our bodies. And then when we think about the sexual energy is literally built through, it's cultivated through our own connection with ourselves and also our own embodiment.
Mm. So how does unhealed energy then show up in the people that you see, and in that frustration with their relationship and intimacy?
Yeah. So I don't look at it so much just as their energy, but as the energy channels,
Mhm.
right? So it's the channels that get blocked or broken.
Yeah.
And when I work with a client, I look at two, really three different things, right? So it's the energy, and that isn't so much. I don't look at that so much as let me look at the energy. I look at that as let's do the tantric practices, which help restore the energy and see
Mhm.
what starts to come up as the tantra starts to work on the energy, right? The
Yeah.
thing about the tantric practices specifically, a big piece of it is an elemental five elemental system.
Yes, I know that. Yeah, that's in
Yeah,
Chinese as well.
sure,
Mm.
yes. And this, it's when we work with different elemental systems, they're going to be a little bit different based on the lineage. This lineage is called the Shangpa lineage. It's about 2,600 years old.
Wow.
And this particular lineage, the way that we work with the energy is through these tantric elemental meditations, which I even hesitate to call them meditations because they're not necessarily meditations, right? They are, but
Mhm.
they're medicine, and they're prescribed as medicine in the East. Okay, this
Mm.
is, sure you know of these things.
Yeah.
And so the way that we work with this is that it's energy healing, it's shamanic healing. So these elementals we work with, they connect with the chakra system and they connect with the energy channels and move through the body in a way that starts to repair the damaged channel pathways, right? The nadis or the meridians.
Mm.
And what we look at then is, okay, what's starting to come up as a result of this healing? Because things always start to come up. So that's the first way
Yeah.
that I look at it with a client in that way. But then there's also always, always, always the nervous system, and how the nervous system is affected and impacted. And then there's also how our bodies are holding this information and this trauma, right? So really, it's like a three-step approach.
And so, why is it that the foundational healing is just necessary for that deeper intimacy? Because obviously, if it's
Mhm.
not released, that's going to manifest in all sorts of things, right? Whether it's connection, it's disconnection, right? And then it's just really being able to be your complete self with someone trust, right? I mean, at the core of things.
Absolutely. And so what I see a lot is, so again, let's just say that someone has experienced just not feeling safe in their bodies or in their sexuality. Again, like let's just talk from a space of not necessarily a capital T trauma, which is really easy to understand why someone would not feel safe during sex, right? If they've experienced trauma in that way, right? Like sexual abuse. But even just being, I live in the United States. So in the United States, there's a lot of things happening right now that cause women to feel really unsafe in their bodies, right? But it could be walking down the street and getting catcalled. It could be,
Yeah.
it could also just be having sex when maybe you really didn't want to. It was consensual, but
Mm.
maybe you really didn't want to. Maybe you're having sex with your partner and you're not really in the mood and you're not fully lubricated and you didn't use lube and you wanna go there, but your body's kind of a no, but you push along anyway. And even something like that, the body can process as trauma or just, and maybe not the first time, but if we keep kind of building that, right? And what's oftentimes I see with the clients that come to work with me is that there's a lot of people pleasers, right? And oftentimes people pleasers and motherhood tend to go together as well, right? The caretaker, the nurturer. And so I often see clients who can, for example, orgasm on their own, but then when it comes to their partner, either they can't orgasm at all with their partner or they, it's not as big, it's not as fulfilling. And part of that is because they don't necessarily feel safe asking for
Mm.
what they need, asking for what they want.
Yeah.
And these are, so basically like if whatever's showing up in your sex life is showing up in your life. Right? If you have trouble speaking up and asking for your needs to be met, I can guarantee you there's somewhere else in your life where that's happening,
Yeah.
or most places, right? If you have, an insecurity about your body or about something of that nature, most likely that's going to filter into something else. And so what I always like to say is when you heal your sexuality, relationship with sex and pleasure, everything else starts to shift because sex is it's the most taboo. It's the most shadowed. sex and money usually are the most taboo and the most shadowed things that we don't talk about in public, even sometimes with friends.
Yeah. And I mean, like you just touched on so many points here, but I want to just circle back to something you mentioned around, when you don't feel like it, you don't want to. And obviously in the work that I see, they have a very small window of when they're, having to have sex in that ovulation window. And the women may not necessarily want it, but they have to because it's part of the whole baby making process. And the men probably, obviously, if it's been years and they really don't want to, and they're just like, oh, look, it's this time. So I have clients who are in that journey. They don't want to, even some of the men, I've had clients who go, I don't want to even know it's your ovulation window. I don't want to have that pressure. So let's circle back. How do you see that affecting conception? And when I always tell them you should be having the intimate relationship and having that beautiful connection. And the baby is a result of that, not the other way around. It's where you want the baby so bad and you're like, after sex, I have to get pregnant. I have to get pregnant. And then it's like forcing that intimacy or forcing just sex. It's not even intimacy and love and connection, right? And then it's like forcing that sort of intimacy rather than having that intimacy first. So what would you say with clients who are obviously on this conception journey and it has become a bit of a chore and that the act of it is not really what they really want, but they know they need to for literally procreation purposes?
Oh, there's so much here. There's so much.
Yeah.
And, I just want to say that my heart just so goes out to that situation and to the people that experience that situation. Because so here's the thing that's really important to understand. Sex is a strategy for most people. Okay. So if we think about strategies and needs, right? What are our needs? So let's just like take sex off the table for a second. If I say I want a hug, and that's a need, okay? It's not actually a need. It's a strategy to get a need met. Okay? And if I think about it for a second and I say, okay, what do I really need from that hug? Is it touch? Is it connection? Is it to feel safe? Like, what is it? And then if I'm like, okay, it's actually connection. I need connection. And then I'm like, okay, well, if I can't get a hug, like say like when we were in COVID, a lot of people couldn't get hugs,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Is there another way for me to get that need for connection met? Okay, what are those needs? Okay, so that's what I mean when I say sex is a strategy. And because it is, okay? And what is the strategy? What is the need in the strategy? So is it connection? Is it play? Is it just pleasure? Is it intimacy? And then a lot of times there's other things that we don't even fully know. It's control. It's trying to feel safe. It's trying to be liked and loved. There's lots of things, right? But when we think of it like that and we apply it to couples trying to conceive right now, sex, the strategy of sex for them becomes procreation. And
yeah.
that's it, right? It's like, I'm using this as a tool to have a baby.
Mm,
This is how I have to do it. There's like, maybe there are some other ways, but this is the way. And then the grip happens, right? The grip, because they're gripped on this way. This is the strategy to get this need that is so important to them met. And so
mm,
what happens when we grip anything that we want so bad? We grip one strategy. That's the only way to do it. Oh my God. Right? It takes all the juice out of it.
yeah.
It takes all the intimacy. It becomes, that is the strategy. Okay?
Yeah.
And so let's start to consider, right? And like those listening that this has been your experience. Why else? Before that, like let's take this off the shelf for a moment. Why else did you have sex with your partner before that strategy became the end all be all? What else? Why else? Was it intimacy? Was it play? Was it just to have a really good orgasm? Right? What was
Mm,
it? Start to consider that again, because if you're just making sex the strategy for procreation, it is absolutely. Now, you can also choose to do that. You could choose for right now, for this window, we're going to do that. We're going to be really conscious about it, that we're doing that.
yeah.
And we're going to feel so grateful that this is an avenue to do that. Wow. Because I can
Mm,
still feel pleasure in this.
yeah.
I can still have fun in this. but this is the strategy that I'm to meet the need of having a baby. And
Mm.
wow, that's so delightful, right? A lot of it is about your perspective of it, right? I feel so grateful that this is the way, as opposed to, oh my God, I have to do this. And oh, my body's not even ready and I don't even want to. And I'm going to do it when I don't want to, right? I have to force myself to do this. And so if you think about it that way, it's going to change everything. It's going to change how your body receives not just the pleasure, but also how your body receives the sperm, the
Yeah.
baby, like everything. It's going to
Right.
create a safer and more, the word voluptuous is coming up, but more spacious environment for you
Mhm.
to actually conceive. And I just want to share this little quick story of two clients I was working with. They were a couple. I was working with them separately and also together. And during our work together, they decided that they wanted to conceive and have a baby. And they were doing tantric practices together. It was really, really beautiful. And while they were having sex, they were manifesting, they were saying what they wanted. They were like bringing all of that to the table. No, we can talk about when we're in those orgasmic states, we're in theta, our subconscious mind is way more open, right? 2 weeks they conceived. 2 weeks. They sent
Mm.
me the stick. They were like, "Oh my
Yeah.
God." Why? I mean, yes, she might be a fertile myrtle, but also like there was something about the way that they connected.
I had a client recently about 6 months ago, and she said the same thing. She had been focused on just sex and having a baby for about over a year. And then that night, it was a ovulation window. I said, "Look, we have to drop all pressure. Just be in the moment, right? Just be intimate and just take it as being this beautiful, deep, intimate connection. The baby will come as a result." And literally, again, 2 weeks later, she's like, "Oh my gosh, I've been doing it all wrong." Like, we went back to it's the strategy, having the baby instead of going, let's just connect and see what happens. And the baby is this beautiful result of
Mm,
us taking all that pressure off. And it's
exactly.
hard, right? Yeah, to be on
Of
the journey. And it
course.
can be.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. Again, it depends, especially if you've been on the journey for a long time and there's that fear that it might not happen. And, I get it.
So let's talk about that shame and how do you see like that cultural conditioning? Obviously, so many different cultures and not being able to talk about things and those early experiences, and how does that shape their sort of intimate relationship now? Based on cultural conditioning and all of that early experience from childhood.
Sure. So, a lot of women that I talk to, when we talk about what their actual sexual experiences, or not even just sexual experiences, but their experiences of talking with their caretakers or parents about sex, what that looked like, a lot of it is we didn't talk about it. We had no conversations. Or if we did, it was really rushed and quick. And, or I was shamed about this, or I was shamed about that, and I had an early sexual encounter. But then it's not just that, right? So that is definitely part of it, big part of it. But then there's also wherever it is that you have grown up, right? Again, like I'm in the States, you're in Australia, yes. So like wherever it is, like I have clients all over the world, and it even if like I've had clients from like Saudi Arabia, and there's a
Oh, wow.
lot of constriction and shame around sex. And, I have one client that's like, I'm not, like, I don't subscribe to that. Like, I never have. But it does not mean that it does not seep into your nervous system, because we're not exempt from that if it's a part of the world around us. And especially now with things like social media and just all this stuff that we are bombarded with on a regular basis, there are a lot of narratives around sex and pleasure that just are a disservice, not just to women. They're a disservice to women in a very particular way, and they're a disservice to men in a very particular way. Right. So like for example, there's a lot of narratives around women as sexual beings. And there's a lot of shame around women being really fully embodied in their sexuality, women asking for what they want, women wanting sex more than men, right? What this means,
Mm.
right? That means they're a slut, or that means that they're promiscuous. That means they're not good wife or mother material, all of this nonsense, right?
Yeah.
There's these narratives that, men's pleasure comes first, and sex, the only form of sex is penetrative sex. And, when men ejaculate, sex is over.
Yeah.
These contribute to a lot of times lack of intimacy and dissatisfaction for everyone involved, because sex is so much more than that. And when we're thinking about, conception and conceiving, and of course, yes, penetrative sex needs to be part of that. But on the days and the moments that aren't doing that, you're not ovulating, maybe it's not penetrative sex that you're experiencing. Maybe it's another form of intimacy. Maybe it's you looking at each other and saying, how do you want to connect tonight? Maybe we just make out. Maybe we
Mm.
just get naked and body caress each other each. Maybe we give each
Mm.
other massages. Maybe we
Yeah.
read a erotic fiction together, so that on the days that, you're not ovulating, and penetrative sex isn't the thing that you're doing, you can still have a sexual, intimate experience with your partner, and you can still keep that sexual energy alive.
Right? Because it's all about that in a relationship, right? Obviously, having a baby, it's like, people may not want that, but for those that do, but it's all about, if you're in any relationship, it is keeping that beautiful, intimate, deep connection alive. And like you said, most people think it's that penetrative sex, but there are so many other ways, because we're human beings at the core of it, and we just want touch and connection, right? It's our core need. And it's
Absolutely.
so hard because, yeah, in a lot of these relationships, right, if that doesn't transform into that beautiful connection, we start losing that. And sometimes for the women, it could be that because I'm not getting from the man, the only way is to have a baby. And they desperately are holding on to this idea that maybe the baby will give me, that loving connection. Especially I found that if clients have not had that beautiful, connection with their own parents growing up. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like maybe if they didn't have that love and connection from their parents, mother or father, every man also needs a father figure and a mother figure growing up, right? Or having someone who is, there for you during your younger years. And some don't because parents divorce early. So how have you seen that reflect in what they were going through as a child and, sort of how they see relationships later as an adult?
Yes. So, it's anything that happens to us. Oftentimes there's different numbers, but I usually say like between birth and 7 years old is
Yes.
really what that trajectory of how we're going to
Right.
play those things out in our relationships. And it is my deep belief, from all the clients I've worked with, but also from my own personal experiences as a woman being in relationships for all these years. I'm a polyamorous woman, that our relationships are the school in which we learn and we heal. And we tend to call in the relationships that reflect our
Mm.
own often parental dynamics. And so if you had an avoidant parent who closed down a lot and didn't give you a lot of love, you're going to attract that within your relationships. Not because, and the thing about that is that we often look at that and be like, oh, of course, yes, this is, oh, it's easy to get frustrated by that, but it's always an opportunity to heal. It's always an opportunity, whatever keeps coming to us that it feels like, why do I still have this pattern? It's because, well, there's more to heal in that. And so our relationships become this beautiful way to restore maybe something that we thought we couldn't fully accept about ourselves. And it's not about off-sourcing that from someone else, but it's about using the connections within our relationships, especially romantic relationships, because our romantic relationships are our attachment relationships. It's typically that mimics the attachment that we had with parents. That's why oftentimes so much stuff can come up during that. And then when you bring sex into it as well, then there's whatever you were taught about sex, you were taught about your body, you were taught about your sexuality, and whatever you may have experienced, just again, even if it wasn't something really big, that maybe made you feel unsafe in the moment or feel shame, all of that then starts to mix up into it as well.
So what are some of the techniques you would advise for them, obviously, to do some of that deep work so that they can restore a lot of that deep connection, trust, and just their own empowerment again?
The methodology that I work with is a combination of the lineage-based Tantra, the nervous system repatterning, and then also somatic work, specifically because I'm working with sexuality, sexual somatic healing.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean, right? Let's just talk about that more in general terms.
Yeah.
And like, why is it that I work with these kind of three processes, right? And so, I already mentioned first and foremost is the nervous system, because the nervous system will always override anything else eventually, right? Like I've had clients come to me that have been in marriages for a really, really long time, and finally their body is just like, no more. And they're just like, I'm done. Like, I'm done having the sex that I don't want to have. I'm done being treated this way. I'm done. Like, their bodies almost just shut down because their nervous system is like, enough. And so we have to first make sure that our nervous systems are not overriding our desire for pleasure. Because if the body senses that something is not safe, even if, and the interesting thing is that a lot of my clients are in very deeply safe and connected relationships. And sometimes it is the fear of that deeper intimacy that actually feels unsafe, because deep, authentic intimacy means you are at your most vulnerable and you're
Yeah.
witnessing someone else at their most vulnerable. And so, a lot of women are like, but I feel safe I actually have a very safe and healthy relationship. And it's like, yes. And there's a part inside that's like, but what if it goes away? What if I get rejected? What if I go this deep with someone and then they can't hold me, even though every sign points to that they can, right? And so first we really get to a space where you want to make sure that your body actually feels safe in intimacy and pleasure. And then the next part is the energy body, working specifically with the energy body. And the way that I personally do that is through the lineage-based Tantra. And what I love about it is that, you just do it and it works. Like, it's a kind of, I call it the backdoor approach. It's not, the coaching is a little bit different, but the Tantra it knows where to go. It knows what to heal, right? It is deep, wise medicine. And so this goes back to the conversation that we just had about the nadis and the broken or blocked nadis, and how this is what most people, in the West miss, because they're always treating the symptoms, as you very well know.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, in the East, it's energy first. It's the energy
Yeah.
body first. And trusting that everything else gets worked out when we focus on that. And
Because we are.
then, yeah,
Because we're totally spiritual and energetic beings, and people
yeah,
forget that, right?
they
In the
forget it.
West,
Yeah,
they think we're just a physical body, but we're actually spiritual, and our physical body is what we've got in this.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the interesting part about that, I'm so glad you said that, because that is the third piece, is the embodiment piece, is the somatics. But despite everyone thinking, most people thinking, oh, we're just a physical body, there's not actually much focus on how the physical body holds trauma and conditioning. It's all in the mind. We are very mental humanity. We operate often from the mind. Even when we try to do body work, it's
Yeah.
oftentimes from the mind. And so that is the piece that a lot of people miss, that trauma does not live in your mind. Trauma lives in your body. And so
Yes.
what your body is holding is really oftentimes is what sets us free to be able to experience more sensation in our bodies, specifically, for female bodies in the vulva and the vagina. Most people are numb in those areas. Like, they don't even realize it because it's a lack of sensation. For me, I had a lot of numbness, and it was just more, I didn't know. Like, most people just don't know how much sensation that you actually can experience vaginally. And, 14 to 17% of people with vulvas can have a penetrative orgasm. That is very low. And, part of it is that a lot of times it's like You just don't know what's possible in your body. And for some, and oftentimes the people that I work with, there, when there's pain, when there's numbness or irritation in your body, it is a sign that something is there and some information is there that you want to work with.
You want to uncover and you want to
Yes.
clear because we don't want it sitting in our bodies. And that's
No.
such a big difference between when you really do this work. And obviously, myself being in Chinese medicine, energy healer all these years, like you said, it's so important that you brought that up because it is all in the mind, right? We are, and when the way you think is going to be manifested and all the trauma, right? The trauma sits in the body, but you're stewing over it, you're going over it again and again until you can truly release it. When you release it from the mind, it will also, doing the somatic work and that, it will also clear it from the body. But many people don't work on that. They just shove it all the way deep down. They're like, oh no, it's too traumatic. I'm never gonna get to it. But your body will somehow, or your mind will somehow push you to deal with it at some point in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, the beauty of somatics is that you don't necessarily have to know what you're looking for, the body is very intelligent. And when the body
Sure.
feels safe enough to have that release, come back to the nervous system, when the body feels safe enough to release, the body will release. Will the body release before that? Absolutely not. Right. And that's the parasympathetic nervous system. That's, we talk about rest and digest, but it's also heal. And it's how we heal when we feel safe.
And that comes back to even having a baby. Like it's all connected, right? If you don't feel safe, the beautiful baby souls are going to come through. It's like, well, I'm not feeling safe yet, right? So a lot of that is also once you feel safe, then the baby and that, that beautiful soul can come through as
And I
well.
love
So
that. Yeah.
it's all
Beautiful.
connected. So look, we talk for so much, but just a couple of practical things, I guess, for women who are going through that. But how can women sort of communicate their desires a bit better? Is there like a strategy they could use that can really be able to communicate that and their boundaries without that fear, guilt, or shutdown? So if they've never been able to voice it, what is just some small thing that they could start with their partners to be able to communicate that across to them?
Yeah. So I would say first, before having that conversation, have a conversation if it is indeed challenging for you, that it's challenging, right? Like, this is scary for me. It's scary for me to talk about my desire sexually, or it's scary for me, or it's uncomfortable for me to ask for what I need in the bedroom. Let your partner know that that's a point of discomfort or a point of challenge for you. Let them know that before you try to do it. Because when we get honest about like things that are challenging, now, don't set yourself up like it's so challenging and I'm never going to do it. And, like you don't have to, there's a owning our stuff. And then there's putting ourselves in that kind of like victim mentality of like, oh, I'll never be able to communicate, right? There's spectrums, right, of that. And so it's more taking an empowered stance within yourself and just letting your partner know, I really want to communicate more about my desires. And sometimes I feel, nervous about that. And I just wanted you to know that so that we can kind of take a step in doing that. And also, it's important as you're communicating, like that you feel received in that. Right. And so sometimes people get defensive. Sometimes people make it about them. And so having this initial conversation will just allow you to understand what the other person is feeling as well. Like it's about both of you together. It's about a collaboration. Whenever we talk about something, it's not about, we're two lawyers negotiating terms. We are on the same side of the table. We are sitting right next to each other. We are looking at each other and we are in divine collaboration with whatever it is that we want, need, and desire. And so that's what I would recommend the first piece. The second piece is when you want to actually talk about your desires and your sexual needs and your boundaries, whatever that is, first do it outside of the bedroom. Don't do it while you're about to have sex, while you're having sex. That's because sex ups the stakes. Right? That's why a lot of women can feel like, I feel so confident. And then when I get into sex, I freeze or I get caught in my head or I don't know what happens. It's because sex ups the stakes of your safety, of your, the fear of rejection. It just does. You're naked. You're vulnerable. Like these things, sex is vulnerable, even if you don't, mentally think it is. It is. And so have a conversation, have a glass of wine or a cup of tea or a sexy snack. And, I want to talk about our needs. I want to talk about our desires. I want to share some things that would be really exciting for me. Talk about it before. So stakes are a little bit lower. You're not in the middle of having sex. Another thing that you could do is you could play a game. Like you can have make it be fun, and you could write down some of your, and I actually have like a sheet sometimes that I give people, and it's very in depth. It goes into kinks, it goes into all kinds of stuff, because it's pretty amazing the kind of fantasies that people have that they keep close to their
Mm.
chest, right, for fear of rejection. And so you can just write some things down and then just exchange it. And it could just be like a little yes, no, or maybe, right? And the ones that are a yes, start talking about those. And it can be about both of you collaborating. And so that's
Yeah.
another piece. And then when we talk about actually speaking up during sex, notice what happens in your body, right? Notice what comes up for you. Do you feel stuck in your throat? Do you feel nervous in your belly? Do you just kind of freeze or dissociate? That's very common
Mm.
because you don't know what to say. Track it. Be kind to yourself. Use your breath. Take deeper breaths. Take a moment. And, I've talked to clients before where, I be like, oh yeah, go to the bathroom and take a moment. I can go to the bathroom during sex. Yes, you can go to the bathroom during sex. You can take a break
Wow.
during sex. You could do what you need to do during sex, right? And so even just hearing me say this, giving you permission to take care of yourself however you need to, because this is the most important piece of that, is that sex is not a performance. It is a collaboration of intimacy, connection, and pleasure, and for a lot of people, love.
And people forget that, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
it comes from, yes, I didn't hear about it. You could just stop in the middle of sex. People think, oh, once you start, you got to go till it finishes, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we talk about, when we were talking about these little micro traumas or micro, you know, I have a pain in my body and I'm just keep going. Now, yeah, sometimes you're just oh, but it feels really good in other ways. So I have this cramp, but maybe I'll keep going. But, we get to be discerning and, being
Yeah.
playful. But we really want to create that safe environment. And if we're only moving forward because we think we have to, or it's a performance and we don't think we can take a break because afraid of you're with a male part of the penis not being erect, or penises can get erect
Mm.
again. It's okay. There's
Mm.
lots of fun ways to even play with taking breaks and whatnot if you need to go to the bathroom or just go take a breath or whatever it is. It's okay.
And so, really, look, just to close up, what does true sexual empowerment look like just in our everyday? Because obviously, it's not just behind closed doors. You touched on a few things, but if you really wanted to step into, sexual empowerment, what could you do from just a little day to day thing, with yourself, with your partner?
Absolutely. And, it is the day-to-day things that really they make the difference, because we could do all the deep, deep, deep work. But then if every time we just go back into, our quote
Mhm.
unquote, our lives, we are perpetuating the same habits and patterns, it's going to take a lot longer for things to change, right? It's about how we show up every day. And so what sexual empowerment looks like, what you have to realize is that it's not just about sex. I am sexually liberated on Instagram. So to me, it's sexual empowerment, sexual liberation. What does this actually look like? And what it looks like for me and what I share with my clients is that it's about your own embodiment. It's about being connected to your body. Most clients that come to me, a lot of times they have, again, all in their heads, very intelligent women. They have no full awareness of their bodies. The more awareness that we can have in our bodies, of our bodies, what our bodies need, the parts inside of us, the younger parts that might need our attention. And this is something that we can foster every day. What do I feel in my body? What do I need? Okay, what do I know to be true? This form of embodiment is one of the most empowering things that you can ever do for yourself. Another piece of this is your own boundaries, not just with others, but also with yourself. How you show up with yourself, how you create a safe environment for yourself, which means You're saying no. You're not self-betraying or self-abandoning because you want to people please or because you just want to be liked or, because you that person pushed a button. You're listening to yourself. And so it starts back. What do I feel in my body? How can I get more connected to my body? How can I then listen to the signs that my body is telling me so that I can have boundaries with myself and with others to hold a safe space and container for myself so that my body and my nervous system and every piece of my being, all the way down to a cellular level, feels empowered, confident, and free in the ways that I experience pleasure, sex, love, and intimacy.
Some great advice there. Brittany, is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up? And how can clients or people that are interested in your work find you as well?
Absolutely. Yes. So the best way right now is through Instagram. I'm sexually_liberated. And then, if you go to my link tree, I have a training around how to have more satisfying sex in the next 6 months, and some other resources as well. I have a podcast. It's not current, but there's a lot of really good episodes of that as well.
Awesome. We're going to post her links in the chat, but hope you all got some amazing insights. And it was a very, very interesting conversation, Brittany. So thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we'll hope to maybe get you back on again soon.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in today to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast and for being part of this community. As a woman, a practitioner, and someone who works deeply with the body, the nervous system, and emotional healing, I see again and again how intimacy and sexual energy are not separate from our health, hormones, or relationships. They are foundational to them. So when we feel safe in our bodies, when we're connected to our desire, and when intimacy becomes conscious rather than performative, everything shifts. Our confidence, our boundaries, our capacity to receive, and the way we show up in partnership and in life. And these conversations I'm deeply passionate about holding because healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens through awareness, embodiment, and honest dialogue like this. So if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to like and share it with someone who may need it. And remember that deeper connection always begins within. So until next time, take care of your body, honor your truth, and keep choosing intimacy with yourself and with life.